Chris says, I seem to get a fairly high volume of a particular movement pattern packed closely together. For example, recently my part A was squat cleans and push jerks, then my part B was dumbbell clean and jerks and pistols. Wondering on the reason behind this movement density. All right, firstly, we need to talk about the current state of exercise science. Traditionally, education into exercise, fitness, strength and conditioning categorizes the goal of the exercise into very certain boxes of stimuli. So if you want to work on hypertrophy, increasing the cross-sectional area or the size of the muscles, you do 8 to 10 to 12 reps. If you want to work purely on strength, then you do lower rep work, under 5 reps. If you want to build localized muscular stamina and endurance, then maybe you do 20 reps plus. Now, this model and all the research coming out now is showing that this is not necessarily the best way to do it. And all the research now is saying sometimes you should go heavy with short reps, sometimes you should go light for high reps, sometimes somewhere in the middle, sometimes you should do a lightweight for low reps working on speed, sometimes you should do heavyweight for a lot of reps. And there's so much variation, and it's no longer a very simple pattern of for this goal do this, for this goal do this, and for this goal do this. There is now a huge amount of variation where there is no longer this perfect link between stimulus and response. So we have almost this black box model where we know that we're applying a stimulus to the body. We know that at the end, coming out of that black box, we have some sort of improvement. We're still learning what's going on in there. And I've spoken about this before, but sometimes we give too much credence to exercise professionals, the people doing our programming, that they know what's happening inside this black box. Now, some have a better idea than others, but I, for one, still have so much to learn, and there's so much we don't know about what is happening inside this box. The actual physical and biochemical mechanisms which are causing the improvements. So a lot of broad stimuli is going to be important. So in terms of if we're going heavy, light, long, short, high rep, low rep, fast, slow, etc., a little bit of everything. Now, why would we be doing a similar movement types in the same bout of training, in the same afternoon, in the same day? There are a couple of different reasons. Firstly, we have this concept of post-activation potentiation, shortened to PAP. And basically, this is a concept where if you do more of a training-based movement first, or more of a skill-based movement first, something where you're lifting heavy, you're turning a lot of muscles on, in following bouts of exercise, you're going to get an improvement in performance. So let me give you an example to explain that. Let's say that your training involves max height vertical leaps or broad jumps or some sort of explosive jumping. If you were to do some heavy back squats first, because it's a very similar biomechanical model and very similar movement types, if you were to do your back squats and then rest for a certain amount of time, the research shows mainly anywhere from 3 to 12 minutes, you will then jump higher in your tests of power. So being able to combine similar though not identical movement types can actually improve your performance in that second bout of exercise. The best way to do this is by doing the heavy work first. And there are some arguments and there are different pieces of research which will say do your heavy first and then your conditioning piece, or vice versa. And there are pros and cons to both. But in terms of the activation patterns and turning those muscles on, it's best to do the heavy work first. So in the example that you've talked about in the question here, Chris, where you've said that part A was your squat cleans and push jerks, then part B was dumbbell clean and jerks and pistols, you can see that we're getting that PAP from your heavy cleans, from the heavy jerks, and then with these muscle activation patterns fired up and turned on, you're able to get a higher performance in maybe lighter, more skill-based work. So this is an argument for heavy training followed by a more skill-based, speed-based conditioning piece following that. Now, the possible causes of this, there are a few different theories, but the one that I think I subscribe to is this concept of motor neuron pool excitability. Basically what this means is if you think of your spinal cord, so you have your spinal cord and nerves exiting your spinal cord at all different levels. Now imagine there's a little volume knob where each of those nerves exits your spinal cord. When you wake up in the morning, all those volume knobs maybe are turned to 2. So your body is not ready to go. It's on, it's generally on, everything is on to a similar sort of degree. If you were then to warm up and do some heavy back squats, what your body does is turns that volume knob up on the back squat nerves. So those nerves involved in activating, innervating the muscles involved in a back squat, the volume will be turned up on those nerves. But it also then has to turn the volume down on some other nerves. So maybe if you're warming up for heavy back squats, it's getting you primed for back squats, but it's not going to help your pull-ups because we've actually turned the volume down on those nerves. So in fact, your pull-up ability may be jeopardized. What you then do is if you're then going from that, again using our example, into some broad jumps, max height vertical leaps, something that is going to take some power or plyometric ability, those knobs, those volume knobs are already turned up. We already have this excitability of the motor neuron pull, that being where your nerve tells your muscle fiber to turn on, and it therefore improves your performance. So again, it's good evidence for the need for a good warm-up, irrespective of if you're doing similar movements in subsequent sessions. Good evidence for the need of a warm-up to start to turn on and activate these muscle groups. Now, we talk about having 2 separate sessions. Again, so in the example here, Chris, part A being squat cleans and push jerks, part B was then dumbbell clean and jerks and pistols. 2 separate sessions here. We need to be aware that if you go straight from one to the other, the effect of fatigue on your body is going to override the benefit of this PAP and therefore cause a net loss. So if you're going straight into it, you're going to be so fatigued from the barbell clean and jerks that when you get to the dumbbell clean and jerks, you're going to have a reduction in performance. So we keep this occasionally in 2 separate sessions so we can get all the benefit of the PAP, of the activation of the muscles, of the turning up the volume knobs on those particular nerves, while not getting any of the effect of fatigue, or at least minimizing the fatigue. And we want this Goldilocks area in the middle where we've had enough rest to be able to recover our capacity to contract our muscle fibers, but not so much rest that we lose this PAP. It comes down also this concept of a lot of volume training of similar movements to your neuromuscular efficiency. Now, some athletes will be very neuromuscularly efficient. They can fire a lot of their muscle fibers doing, for example, a 1 rep max back squat. And if they can turn on 98% of their muscle fibers, they're going to be able to lift a lot. But then they'll fatigue those 98% very quickly. They don't have the stamina. Whereas someone with low neuromuscular efficiency, they will maybe only be able to activate 70% of their muscle fibers, which means that their 1 rep max is not going to be as good, but put them at 85% of their 1 rep max and they can do lots of reps. And that 85% is where the neuromuscular efficiency is often tested. How many reps at 85% can an athlete do? If they can only do 2, 3, or 4 reps, they have high neuromuscular efficiency. They're using a lot of muscle fibers, which means they're efficient. If they're able to do 8, 9, 10 reps plus at 85% of their max, they're not as efficient in their ability to recruit muscle fibers. Therefore, they can do more reps. They're not as strong, but they have an increased ability to do a lot of reps close to their 1 rep max. And you can probably think about people who fit into each of these categories. So how does this come back to this density of training? Well, if you're trying to fatigue a large percentage of muscle fibers for someone with low neuromuscular efficiency, you want to be adding more on top of more. Think of this as a concept like stripping, which is a bodybuilding method where maybe you have a series of 5 barbells, you pick up the heavier one and you do bicep curls until failure. Then you go to the next lightest in the rack to failure, to the next, to the next, and to the next. Someone with high neuromuscular efficiency, they will hit the wall very quickly. Someone with a lower neuromuscular efficiency will be able to keep going for longer because they haven't fatigued as many of their muscle fibers. So what this style of training allows us to do, again, going from a barbell work into dumbbell work, which is faster and lighter, it means that if you're only able to fatigue 70% of your muscle fibers in those heavy cleans, you can then start to eat into some of that remaining muscle fiber fatigue potential after that part A. So as you go into part B, you can start to ensure that you're fatiguing as many of the muscle fibers as possible, therefore adding a greater stimulus and therefore hopefully having a greater, more beneficial effect.